Long Range Planning Update webinar. My name is Ella, and I'm going to be both your producer and moderator tonight. And before we start the presentation, I want to take a minute to ensure that everybody is familiar with how to handle the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you'll see there's an attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. The viewer window will display the presentation as I walk through it. And on the right, you'll see the control panel that can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the horizontal double arrow button in the upper left corner. If you minimize the panel, you'll actually get a better view of the presentation. Another important part of the control panel is the questions pane. Since it is just me on the line tonight, I will do my best to answer questions as we go, but we may be following up with you guys along the way with more answers later. And other than that, if you need to step away for a minute, make sure you don't close the window because you'll have to re-log in to join back in. And that being said, if you miss a little bit, we're going to be recording it tonight, and so you'll be able to view an online archive later and hopefully pick up on anything you missed. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, I'm doing tag team tonight, so just bear with me if I get a little bit slow along the way. All right, so let's get started. All right, so what is the background of the long-range planning update and the proposed volunteer structure that we're talking about tonight? So in 2012 at convention, there was a resolution that asked Fraternity Council to look at the volunteer structure and making jobs more manageable. The council appointed a task force. I'm actually one of the members of the task force. The task force has met in person a few times, done a bunch of different phone calls, met with Fraternity Council this last year and some other experts around organizational planning, etc. Julie Lachey gave an overview of where we're headed with all of this at the convention in 2014 if you were there. And so now along the way we're sharing more details in an effort to get feedback and answer any questions that we have. But the big core of this is really that we want to meet the evolving needs of our membership and utilize the talents that we have in our organization. And as our organization changes, not only do our women change, but their needs change. And you may have along the way filled out a survey that went out a couple months ago asking women across the organization to give us a little bit more insight into what kind of volunteer roles and involvement with CAPA they would like to have. And an interesting fact that we may refer to again throughout the conversation, because I think it's a really important one, is that of over 8,000 respondents to the survey, which is a great number, 88% of them said that they'd be willing to serve the fraternity as a volunteer if jobs were smaller. So the reassessing what we ask our volunteers to do and how much time we have of them was really one of the big impetus for this new plan. All right, so the Volunteer Structure Task Force. So here's a list of the ladies that are on the task force. I'm assuming that most of you know probably the majority of them, or at least know a couple. Coming out of this call tonight, feel free to reach out to any of these ladies for more information or a deeper dive. They all know that we're having this conversation tonight. And quite a few of them will even be at ACS if you want to sit down and have a further conversation, or you want to talk to me. Any of those things, we're all up to speed with where the fraternity is, and everyone on this page has given their blood, sweat, and tears towards this plan. So feel free to ask questions, and then and spend some time with the ladies that you know well to get comfortable with this if you have any kind of open items coming out of it. All right, so what were our guiding principles? As I mentioned before, with our members evolving, we need to have evolving roles for each member to engage in. We want to make those roles enjoyable and manageable. We want to blur some of the lines between chapters and associations. I'm sure many of you have realized over the years sometimes how different those worlds are, not just on the ground, but within our fraternity volunteer structure. And so by tapping into the talents of our women and applying them to the needs of both our chapters and associations, we can start to blur some of those lines. We also want to better utilize the talents of our fraternity headquarters staff. We have a wonderful, wonderful group of women there that know a lot about our organization and have, they're there to help support the volunteer organization. And so we need to make sure we're best utilizing staff who can be full-time on this stuff versus the rest of us that have all those kind of real-life things that pop in. Volunteers enjoy team-based work, so we want to make sure that we have women not out on islands, which I think sometimes province officers can kind of feel like they are, but participating as a team and having that support structure around them as the day-to-day duties of real life call. We want to flatten the organization. There traditionally has been this sense that a volunteer is climbing a ladder, maybe from advisor to PDC to RDC, or from association president to PDA to RDA, whatever that kind of traditional ladder there was. We want to do away with that feeling and make it more of an organization where women can engage where they feel like they're best suited. Hang on, I've got a question or two. Let me see really quick. Hang on. One of the viewers is not able to see the slideshow. If anybody else is having that problem, can you just shoot a quick note in the question pane for me? And let me know if you're having a problem seeing it. Okay, let me see. Let me try something else. Okay, someone else mentioned that they found it behind the question pane, so you may need to move your question pane to be able to see it. Let me see here. Okay, so you have a couple that can see it and a couple can't. My audience view shows a slide that says guiding principles on it. So let me know if moving the question pane or maybe even moving the entire control panel off to the side or maybe to a corner of your screen helps so you can see it. Okay, and a couple people are letting me know that they can see it. So I'm hoping that everybody else figures it out pretty quickly. All right, so back to where I was. So we talked a little bit about the sense that volunteers felt they needed to climb a ladder in the organization. And wanting to make it more of an opportunity for women to move around the organization versus up. We wanted to re-examine the role of Fraternity Council and make sure that Fraternity Council was able to dedicate their volunteer time to being visionary and strategic versus being wrapped up in the day-to-day. Some of our council positions, as I'm sure you guys know, have turned into 20, 30-hour-a-week jobs at this point. And it's really just dealing a lot of times with day-to-day issues and activities that are going on versus being able to look forward and see where the organization is going. So we wanted to examine that role of Fraternity Council and make sure that they were enabled to be that guiding body. And we wanted to think creatively about how to best support our chapters and associations. You know, just because everything's been done a certain way for so long doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a better or newer way. With technology and with women stretched so far, between schoolwork and families and jobs and all of those different things, we wanted to get creative and make sure that everybody was being supportive the best way that they could be. All right, so all that being said, here is the current draft of what the future strategic plan, or the future fraternity organization, looks like. So as I was just talking about, the council on here is enabled to be visionary. When we looked at the position descriptions historically, they're very task-oriented. They made the jobs very complicated and time-consuming. And we have to ask ourselves if we've lost good volunteers because of the type of job that we were asking people to do in those roles. So by having a more robust, tactical kind of operational day-to-day group able to handle that, that boots-on-the-ground type stuff, the Fraternity Council is able to be that more visionary body. So the functional directors and the hub. So off to the left, you'll see that we have functional directors that essentially become the subject matter expert and oversight for each of these functional areas of the fraternity. So you have a director of academic excellence, director of alumni relations, etc., on down the list. I think this is a great time to highlight on here that while there is, for instance, an alumni relations director, your director of communications is going to be handling communications for alumni associations and chapters. Heritage, that's for alumni associations and chapters. Leadership development, membership, philanthropy, programming. All of these functional areas are now fraternity-wide versus being split between alumni associations and chapters. So we have those folks focusing on each of those functional areas, and then in each district, we wanted to move away from using the terms province or region just to make sure that this really felt new and fresh. But each district would have a district director who oversees both alumni associations and chapters. She ultimately is the team leader for a team of women that are subject matter experts that work directly with these functional directors to kind of be that, that first point of contact for the associations and chapters in the district. So you'll see that a District A, for instance, would have this team of 10 specialists, standards, membership, heritage, et cetera, all the way around the wheel. And those women would work directly with the associations and chapters within their district on that subject matter that they are an expert in. On top of that, we've got 3 new special committees that pop up in this structure. The standing committees, for the most part, will look very familiar to everyone. And the special committees, the new ones, we've got a new chapters committee. New Chapters Committee would be a group of women that specialize in implementation of new chapters and the needs that come with those colonies and new groups of women. A group that oversees at-risk chapters. We've got a few of those chapters, as I'm sure many of you have heard about over the last couple of years, that are certainly not reflecting the values of the fraternity and need additional focus and support to hopefully get back in line with what those are. And also a collegiate advisory committee is something that we've talked about doing. This would be a group of actual collegians that work closely with fraternity council and standing committees, et cetera, to be a more reflective voice of what our active member feels, says, et cetera. So those are 3 new special committees that came up as part of the assessment of the overall organization. One key piece that you don't see on here is the addition of a staff member focused directly on talent management. And those of you that have been involved for a little while may have met or worked with Sarah Bowman in the past. She used to be in our education department, left for a short hiatus and went over to Ohio State and is now back with us as our Director of Talent Management. And having that person at headquarters, she's not only going to be helping us coordinate volunteers and matching skill sets with jobs and availability and all of those great things, but also help us implement organized training programs and make sure that all of the women involved in each of these more individualized roles are well trained and enjoying their jobs within this new structure. We do have a question on here. How do the district specialists work with the existing AB and HB structure? So one thing that we changed in the new structure is that we separated again, like we had historically, the advisory board and house board committees. So you'll see that these, because the needs of these organizations tend to be, there is some overlap, but they do tend to be very different, and house boards are dealing with everything from fundraising to infrastructure to finances and some of those really hardcore kind of technical issues, separating those organizations back out. The district director would be directly interfacing with advisory boards and house boards on more macro issues. But within the hub and spoke system, where there are specific, whether it's advisor recruitment, the membership person on the committee might be working with the advisory board and house board standing committees. The alumni relations specialist might be working directly with the advisory board and house board committees. So we envision that the specialists would all be interfacing with the advisory board and house board committee infrastructure. All right, so moving on to the districts themselves. Because these areas will now be both, the women volunteering for these areas, excuse me, will be both chapter and association focused. We need more smaller bite-sized areas. We looked at dividing, and this isn't set in stone, but it's an option that we're looking at. Each of these areas would have somewhere around 10 chapters and around 14 to 20, maybe a handful more alumni associations. In parts of the country where districts have more alumni associations in that ratio, we would potentially have 2 alumni relations specialists on the hub. If you notice that on the previous page, but we would customize kind of that hub and spoke system for each of the different districts. But we would have a full realignment based on this, and hopefully be eliminating some of the other than California, the cross-state splits between districts that happen now with the provinces and regions. So I know there's been a bit of rejoicing based on that as well. All right, so what does it mean to you as a volunteer? So we're looking, again, at having a greater variety of volunteer opportunities across the organization and being able to better align those opportunities with your passions and your lifestyle. Versus, having kind of a climb of the ladder that I spoke of before and kind of maxing out and not necessarily having somewhere to go, depending on what your passion area is or, what your time availability is. There are multiple different options for you across this hub and spoke system. It also gives each volunteer more exposure to both collegians and alumni. We historically have tended to be, very separated between kind of a chapter track and alumni association track, and this gives everyone the opportunity to work with, meet more, and engage with more women in the broader functioning of our organization. So, and I think that the benefits to our members are pretty apparent too. I think most importantly, it not only improves our relevance to today's women and allows those that 88% of the 8,000 people to have a smaller, more digestible job that they can engage in. But even at the chapter and association level, the different officers within those organizations are going to have subject matter experts that are accessible and dedicated to them to work with. Right now, there are a few different areas across the fraternity where we have some specialists that work by region. Risk management is a great example. But at this level, there will be more volunteers with more local knowledge and more ability to engage with those women on a day-to-day basis. So I think that will be a huge benefit to our members and to our various boards. And it also positions us to be leaders among fraternal organizations. We're one of the organizations that is moving towards this structure. Some already have moved to something kind of similar, dividing duties up across the country. But it certainly keeps us progressive and keeps us relevant in a changing environment. All right, so when is it happening? So the first big step outside of the long-range planning task force meeting and coordinating with council and reviewing our recommendations and refining and all of that was to start to roll out some of this information at the town hall meetings that occurred at each of the regional leadership conferences and province meetings. So hopefully the majority of you were able to attend those, and some of this is repetitive for you. But for those of you that didn't, that was kind of one of the first steps in communication. One of the next big things is that Council is starting to approve the specialist teams in various areas. So 6 of the 9 content specialists on the wheel actually have plans to have their appointments finalized in the coming 2 months. That includes standards, membership, Panhellenic, philanthropy, heritage, and academic excellence. So we're starting to get these women put in place and working directly with the current province officers in those areas. There's going to be a little bit of a try to roll everything out as seamlessly as possible and be very clear on delineation of duties and how everybody's supposed to work together down the line. So rest assured that fraternity leadership knows that as these women are engaging with chapters that PDCs have to know about it, or if they're working with Alumni Association on recruitment ideas, that they're talking to the PDA about it. So there will be more information to come on how exactly this communication flow is going to work, but we are starting to get a lot of these women in place, which is extremely exciting. The formal rollout or the final rollout of the full structure will, of course, have to wait until convention in 2016 because there are numerous bylaws and standing rules changes that come with this, as you can imagine. But that will be kind of the end of the road for all of that. But in between now and convention, we'll have a good idea of how these specialist teams have been working together and be well prepared to launch the specialist teams for alumni relations, leadership development, and programming. So, and a little bit of this is kind of repetitive. So what do we have when we're done? We have we'll have better mechanisms to recruit, develop, and sustain our volunteers. A lot of that will be driven by our Director of Talent Management and just the ability to engage women at the levels that they want to be engaged. I'll have an expanded staff at headquarters to help support Fraternity Council's vision and to support these volunteers that will be all over the country. Be better prepared for the future. So as we continue to have women that max out on their volunteer hours and that sort of thing, we'll be able to engage more talent and keep more talent as far as our volunteer structure goes to prepare for that future. And hopefully everybody will have a more fulfilling volunteer experience. Instead of either climbing the ladder, not having anything else to do, feeling like you didn't climb the ladder, whatever those kind of long-standing results have been of the existing structure, we're going to have something that there's the right job for everybody at any given point in their life, which I think is a really special and important place for us to be. And we'll all hopefully feel a lot more fulfilled as volunteers versus, let's be real, we can all get kind of exhausted sometimes. So I know I personally am looking forward to figuring out a couple places over the years to try to fit into this structure, but that's all remains to be seen. So that's all the kind of big picture stuff that I have for you guys. I did want to open it up and see if anybody has any specific questions that I could answer, or if you want to take a little bit of time at ACS and discuss with some of the Long Range Planning Committee members. Of note, and I don't have it on this page here, so if you have a pen handy, you might want to jot it down, but we did launch a new website called, the URL is www.womenwhokappa.org, and the entire site revolves around the rollout of this new structure. And so the Long Range Planning Committee, Council, everybody recognized the fact that there needed to be an open forum beyond just reaching out to the women on the list that I showed you earlier. This website gives you the ability to send in questions and learn a little bit more about the structure, hear a little bit more about what happened at different town halls, that type of thing. So you can feel free to visit womenwhokappa.org for more information and hopefully get any other questions that you have answered. Okay, I'll give you guys a couple seconds to see if you have any questions. All right. Okay, well, great. I'm hearing that people don't have questions. So just in case you do have something you want to follow up directly with me on, my email is ellakkg@gmail.com. Pretty easy one to remember, so feel free to send me a note, send any of the ladies on the committee that you know a note, send the womenwhokappa.org a note. You got lots of ways to get any lingering questions that you guys have answered. So make sure that you do that if you have something, or bring it to ACS and we can talk about it there. So quick little follow-up things for you guys. So as the webinar closes, a survey is going to pop up on your screen. You'll be prompted to respond to a couple of evaluation questions, so please take a moment to share your thoughts. And that being said, thank you guys for having a great night, or thank you for joining me tonight. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys all here in a couple of weeks in lovely Columbus, Ohio. Talk to you all soon.